everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm excited to be sharing the 5th video in my TMNT series and part 2 of my Krang build. So watch along as I paint up my version of Krang. Okay, so we are down to the main event. The man of the hour, the star of the show, everyone's favorite sentient brain from Dimension X, Krang. Now, you can see I have a couple of different versions here. I have this one here, which is kind of the more traditional belly version, but I also have this one here that's anchored to a tether. Now, say what you will about the 2016 live-action movie, but one thing I did really like was Krang's design, and I really liked the idea of him being tethered to his android body. It makes a lot of sense, and so I took inspiration from that and came up with my own design. Now, I think what I want to do first is paint the tether chrome. Like his stomach, I want it to feel like it's, a medical apparatus, so I want it to feel clean and sterile. Then I think from there I will paint some of the pieces like these little rings on the hoses aluminum, and then paint the hoses themselves black. Now I also have these clear hoses here, which will then fit underneath here. They'll kind of they'll seat into those holes in the bottom of him and then glue to the front of the tether. And the idea is they're just some kind of a hose that's either pumping, some sort of fluid into him or out of him and stuff. But I wanted to print something in clear. Now, I'll probably end up painting these booger green or snot green, as sort of a nod to the mutagen from the series. But I do have 2 of them just in case I'm not happy with that, or more than likely I'll probably break one. So I've already had to reprint the head and the body, so why not reprint those as well? So anyways, I'm gonna hop off camera, get my paint set up to do the chroming process, and then I'll come back and we'll get started. To get the chroming process started, I first lay down a base coat of All-Clad 2's Gloss Black. For the best results, I do recommend starting with a dust coat first, then come back in with a heavier wet coat. Next up is the chrome paint itself, which of course is from All-Clad 2 as well. Now I do want to apply thin coats of the chrome, working up to the desired effect. If I go too heavy, it's just going to turn silver and ruin the chrome effect. Then to protect the paint, I seal it with All-Clad 2's Aqua Gloss. After masking off the tether, I block in the body with Mecha Air's Pink. Then I come back in and start shading with Game Air's Beastly Brown, followed up with their Terracotta. The last step in blocking in the body is to add some highlights with Game Air's Pale Flesh. Okay, so the skin tones are blocked in on both these Krangs, and so far looking really cool, really happy with how they're turning out. So now what I want to do is start focusing on the details like the mouth and teeth. But before I do that, I think I want to come in real quick and touch up the inside of this guy's mouth. I just want to try and get some better coverage. It's hard to see here, but I want to try and get better coverage underneath his tongue and behind his lower teeth. So I'm going to hop off camera, do that real quick. Then once I'm happy with that, we'll come back and we'll focus on the teeth, gums, and tongue. So I'll be right back. For the gums, I just mixed up a bit of terracotta red and some Mecha Air pink. Then I mixed in a bit of off-white, thinned it down, and painted the tongue just to give it kind of a pasty look. I used the same paint I mixed for the tongue to add some highlights to the lips. Lastly, I paint the teeth with a mixture of model colors, sand yellow, and Mecha Air's pure white. So one last thing I want to do before moving on to the eyes is to do a little bit of dry brushing on this guy. He's got a nice subtle skin texture over pretty much the entire model, and I'd like to call attention to it in certain areas. Mainly the cheeks, probably the eyebrows, the wrinkles in the forehead, and a little bit on the front of his tentacles there. And then I also want to hit the top of his head here. I'd like for this to feel a little bit more like a callus, so I'll probably go a little more heavy-handed there. Then once I'm done, I can seal everything up and we can move on to the eyes. For the dry brushing, I used Game Air's Flesh mixed with a little bit of model color off-white. Okay, so I've got the eyes blocked in, they're all dried, ready to go. So now what I want to do is place my pupils. And I have my artwork over here to the side, and I have a little bit of black paint on my palette. So what I want to do is just take my brush here and get just a little bit on the tip, because I want to just do a couple of little pinpricks. So I've got that mixed up, and then come in here kind of based off my artwork. Looks pretty good. So now all I need to do is make them bigger. So let's see if I can do this without getting my old man glasses out here and get a little bit more paint on my brush. We can try and make a clean circle. Tentacles in my way, and it's driving me nuts. Let's do this other eye first. See if we can... Actually, you know what? Let's just spin him here. A little more paint on my brush, and then we can come in. Now, let's see here. So let's... All right, there's one. That looks pretty good. So now, let's get the other side here, see if we can do this without mucking something up. There we go. Those look pretty good. That other one probably needs to be just a little bit bigger. See if we can get in here and make this one just a touch. There we go. And just like that. So I'm going to hop off camera real quick and do a little bit of cleanup on this, but I like that placement. I think that looks good. Okay, so I finished up the pupils on these two Krangs, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. I think they look great. And I've gone ahead and sealed the eyes with a clear UV resin, as well as sealing the teeth and tongue in a satin varnish. So these guys are pretty much good to go. Now, for this one here, I still need to paint the back, top and bottom black, seal that in a matte clear coat, and he will actually be officially done. But this guy here still needs a little more work. So what I need to do is mask off the back of his head here so that I can paint the rings on the tether. Once I'm happy with that, remove the masking and then hand paint the part that's embedded in his skin. Then I can seal everything in a matte clear coat, remove the masking from the tether, and paint the hoses. Then once I'm done with that, I can move on to the front hoses as well. Then once I'm finished with those, I can paint the base. To paint the rings on the tether, I used Metal Colors Dull Aluminum. I also used this same color to trim out the areas around the body. For the hoses, I went with my trusty old Mecha Air Pure Black. Okay, so I finished up the tether on this guy, and I think he looks awesome. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now, I was a little worried with how the dull aluminum was going to look with the chrome steel, but I think they turned out great, and I love the contrast between the two metals. I do think they complement each other quite well. So now that this guy is done, it is time to move on to these med tubes, which run along the front of his tether. So I printed these in clear with the idea that I could paint them with a transparent paint to try and create the illusion that there's some sort of fluid on the inside of the tubes. So the color I think I'm going to go with is kind of a snotty green, just kind of a nod to the mutagen that's always been present throughout the series. Now I did a little test last night on a spare part that I had printed. Now this is a bit more green than I had intended, but it was more so to see how the effect worked. And I like it. I think it looks pretty cool. Now, does it look like there's something on the inside? That's up for debate, but I'm gonna roll with it anyways. So what I need to do now is just hop off camera, mix up a better color, come back, we'll paint the tubes, seal it in a clear coat, paint the brackets, and then paint the tubes that go into his stomach, seal it again, and then we can finally call Krang done and move on to the base. I mixed up some of Tamiya's transparent yellow and blue to get kind of a snotty color green, then I just simply brushed it over the tubes. Now I do have a question for anyone watching. Have you all noticed that Tamiya's paints smell like cough syrup? Okie dokie, so these med tubes are done and they turned out really well. I like them. I really like the transparent kind of snot yellow. I think that turned out really cool and I'm really happy with how that looks. So I did have to paint the brackets and tubes off camera and I do apologize for that. They were just too small and fiddly to have to try and paint in camera. So anyhow, I'm going to take this outside real quick, seal it in a matte clear coat, and then we can call it done for this part of the build and move on to the base. So it's time to start painting up this base, and I think for the most part I want to keep this pretty simple. So what I'm thinking is, of course, block it all in, come in, maybe do a little bit of shading, maybe a wash or two, maybe even do a little bit of dry brushing, and that should pretty much be it for the base. So I'm going to jump off camera real quick, get everything set up, come back, and we'll start blocking everything in. Blocking in the base, I used Metal Colors Dull Aluminum. Now I don't preach it enough, but I absolutely love these metal colors from Vallejo. If you've never had the pleasure, pick some up, you will not be disappointed. Okay, so I've got the base color blocked in and sealed with a clear coat, and now it's time to move on to a little bit of shading. Now I do want to keep the shading to just the floor panels on the top, which is why I've gone ahead and masked off the sides. Now for the shading itself, I've just mixed up a slightly darker version of the base color, which is this Vallejo Metal Colors Dull Aluminum, mixed with a little bit of black. So I've already got that mixed up in my airbrush and ready to go, so I'm going to stop rambling on and get started. For the larger pipes, I paint them Model Colors Off-White. Then for the three next to them, I simply paint them Model Air German Panzer Gray. Pipes get painted with, wait for it, Metal Colors Copper. The last two pipes I just paint with Model Colors Carmine Red. I finished up the pipes and I've sealed everything in a clear coat. Before I did that though, I did do a light gray wash over all of the pipes just to dirty them up a bit. Now, I do apologize for not getting that on camera. But now that the clear coat's dry, what I want to do is come in now and do a dust wash over the tops of the pipes. I would assume that over the years dust would have settled through the grates, and I think that'll be a pretty cool effect. We'll also put a little bit around the base of the pipes and maybe some here on the floor. Then once I'm done with that, I will do a little bit of edge weathering, some dry brushing on the base, and then we can move on to the grates. I go over all the pipes with Mecha Air's Desert Wash. Now that the wash has had time to dry, I realized I don't really like it. In fact, I hate it. It's just way too yellow, especially on the white pipes. So what I'm going to do is I just want to go back over them with a darker wash. And I'm just going to take the wash I've already got in my cup, mix in a little bit of leather brown and probably a little bit of panzer gray just to muddy it up, then go over the yellow and try and make it feel more like dirt. Alright, that looks so much better, and I'm glad I took the 20 minutes or so to go over the previous wash. Now, is it a convincing dust effect? It's debatable, but it does add weathering to the pipes, which is what I was ultimately going for. And I know the grates are going to cover most of this, but I'm still happy I took the time to make them feel dirty. So now that the base is done, we can move on to the grates. I want to block in the actual grates with Metal Colors Burnt Iron. Then I mask them off and paint the frames dull aluminum. And to finish them off, I did a little bit of shading with the leftover paint I had mixed up for the base. So now that I have my two Krangs and the parts for the base painted, it's time to glue them up, add some magnets to the tether, then I can finally combine everything with the Android body. Then we'll come back for one last look and my final thoughts. So there you have it. Finally, Krang, his android body and base are done, combined, and they look absolutely amazing together. Seriously though, I am really happy with how he turned out. I think he looks great. And as I stated before in my previous video, I had an absolute blast painting this model. And it's really got me excited to be moving on to Baxter. But real quick, let's see how he looks with Bebop and Rocksteady. I'm not gonna lie, I think they look fantastic together. And they're just missing that one particular character. And you know who I'm talking about. But that's a project for a later date. So I think that pretty much wraps up Krang, and as much fun as I had, I'm a little sad that it's over. I think for any of us who enjoy building stuff, the fun is in the actual process, and once that process is finished, even though we have something amazing in front of us, unfortunately it's come to an end. So enough of my rambling, let's wrap this up. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and until next time, take care everyone.